Hi humans! So today I'm going to read a chapter, or a scene, from Helmet and Forceps, the novel I'm working on. Ooh. If you like it and you want to read more, there are a bunch of other scenes up on the Patreon. I think it's a $3 level. So yeah, here we go. This is what I spent most of today on. New pages for Helmet and Forceps. Double space, I think it's about 6. It's a scene in which they meet each other, and I really like it. It has a lot of promise. I'll read you some of it. I need to do something, Helmet strained against the iron hush of the waiting room. She felt that hooking urge dig for grip behind her belly button, whispering, move, go, do. But no barging, no clever algo, no stomp or fist wave would get her closer to Forceps right now. She flipped her optics from transparent to opaque, and the butter yellow walls, a color Helmet was sure had been extensively tested and modeled to maximize calm confidence, faded to the skybox of her simulated jump pad. The sky stretched out in every direction, a recreation of current local weather conditions, as though the entire bulk of the vertiginous city had gone invisible, leaving only the foggy, wind-twisted air. Helmet reached for the hospital's disease classifier, an algo widely used to advise doctors on diagnosis and treatment plans. Public, of course, since the passage of the city's AI Access and Rights of Explanation Bill. She'd stored a copy the first time Forceps was admitted. They'd been strangers then, meeting only hours earlier on a transcontinental maglev. Those trains didn't have seat assignments, unless you popped for your own pod, but she preferred the view cars with their large cozy seats facing out toward the speed-blurred landscape. It was pouring rain. The view car sparsely populated, and the land outside so tightly green the storm's streaks of lightning were cut into dotted zigzags. Well, I gotta fix that. It was pouring rain. The view car sparsely populated, and the land outside so tightly green the storm's streaks of lightning were cut into dotted zigzags. The low air tube which held the maglev and kept air resistance down was spotted here and there with acrylic-adapted lichen. The scrubber drones would get to them eventually, but with thousands of miles of tubes to clean, you couldn't expect perfection. Helmet pulled up a map showing the train's progress overlaid with the massive storm. Even at its current size, they should be clear of it in an hour or so. Just in time to feel the slowdown as they made their one stop in Mountain, a cable city still surrounded by the scars of a sprawling flat metropolis that had gushed along the foothills for hundreds of kilometers in the decades before the cable towers had been invented. After passengers and goods were exchanged, in the hour layover, they would resume climbing and tunneling through the mountain range which gave the city its name. Helmet was distracted with her maps when a twiggy someone in overlarge black drawstrings and a matching pullover wheeled in. They arranged themselves 2 seats away and settled in to watch the storm. It was the chair that caught Helmet's eye first, shoved away to make room for the stranger to bring up the seat's flip-up footrest. It was heavy and antique and it lacked the hub motors and sleek shaping she was used to seeing. Hi, she said, leaning forward to peek around the divider. You a storm watcher too? Oh, they said as if baffled by the question. Is that why there's no one in this car? Well, I wouldn't say no one, but yeah, gloom tends to keep the crowds in their reading nooks and dining cars. I'm Helmet, by the way. She gave a little wave. I'm Salima Tsaigan, or I used to be. I'm not sure who I am now. They kept their eyes on the passing landscape, an impressionist's rendition now all muddled. Colors through watered glass. That's a grounder name, right? Helmet figured that was the kind of answer that stunned people into silence, but she couldn't help but barrel on. She'd met grounders before, of course. Every 5th 10th and 15th year class had a special week-long trip to a souk, a multi-tribe gathering market at which metropolitans were welcome to set up stalls and sell their wares. I've met Saigon before, she admitted, but never on a maglev. The swaddled figure sat there motionless. Wrong there. Bam. Sat there motionless for a long time before turning to Helmut and saying, "How do I get a new name? A name like yours?" A username? Oh, that's easy. Any currently unoccupied noun qualifies. There's a whole list of decamped nouns in the obit servers. It was only then that Helmut noticed. This grounder had no hookups, not even dermals. I could look them up for you and get you through the whole process if you want. Decamped? Oh, yeah, like dead? Or, oh, yeah, like died? Our names go back into the public pool when we get composted. There's a whole ritual or whatever. I guess some people also decamp because the names their parents picked just didn't sit well. You can't recycle your name, though. Grounder names aren't available to pillions. A deep breath and a nod was all Helmut needed to bloom her transparent interface and route her way to the public obit list. Her FOV began swimming with names and new ones wafting in by the second. The longer the name was left unchosen, the less momentum it was given by the filters until they settled into a sedimentary bed beneath the floating leaves of more popular names. Kettle? Helmut asked, listing off names from the active section. Cliff? Bulldozer? Pillow? Bracket? Panel? Leash? Hood? Any of these hitting the spot? But the bundle only shook their head. Oh, how about history? That's a good one. No again. Photograph? No. Audience? No. Helmut figured why not try the bottom of the pile. Groundlords had very special names after all. Maybe this one needed a name no one else would like. Aglet? Event? Forceps? Priority? Forceps, they said finally, reaching out a long, slender arm. This is not from, it's for. Forceps, they said finally, reaching out a long, slender arm for Helmut's hand as she fumbled over the two intervening chairs to meet them, palm to palm in greeting. Hello. My name is Forceps. Pleasure. Helmut could feel a warm flush blossoming from where their hands still touched. She took the various required pictures, front of face, sides of head, fronts and backs of hands, full body, close-up of right eye, and close-up of left eye to finish the camping application. Where are you from? Forceps asked after a long silence, sitting side by side. The maglev climbed out from under the soaking storm as they transitioned from matted green to wide golden plains. End of the line, she replied, pointing the direction the maglev was headed. Born and raised. You? But in response, Forceps only pointed out, perpendicular, toward the land becoming slowly more mountainous. Oh, right. Y'all move around so much, your where is much bigger than mine. By the end of the trip, 9 hours coast to coast, Forceps was haggard and weak, and when they wheeled onto the platform with Helmut close behind, immigration took one look at them and called triage. We got a very sick-looking grounder down here, the official hollered into their dermals. Forceps flinched. Oops. Forceps flinched at the title. Insult or innocuous was all in the tone. They were dizzy and tired and couldn't croak out a response. The quarantine alarms hadn't been triggered when Forceps took the required spit and swab before entering the maglev, so there wasn't much worry they were a danger to anyone, but stigma hovered nonetheless. Housing shortages that had plagued the area for 200 years had been eradicated when the cable towers were installed, and now the city had an open immigration policy. If you could get here, you could live here. So they knew they wouldn't be turned away, but they hadn't been expecting a medical greeting party. Above them, the cable towers stretched skyward for what felt like forever. It was like being tiny again, lying on their mother's That's right, yeah. Lying on their mother's cloak at the foot of the monumental redwoods, trees so big they held up the sky. Forceps had seen the cable cities before, of course. Their black columns were visible for hundreds of kilometers, but they had never been so close. Never gone up one. They stared up and up until the tunnel vision closed in again, and they fainted back into their wheelchair. That was the first time Helmut had watched as Forceps was admitted, dragged along in their wake, and deposited like so much river silt in a hospital waiting room.